I'm excited to introduce our Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences, Dr. Ruth Feingold. Dr. Feingold has served as Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences since 2016. Ruth is also a professor of English with specializations in post-colonial studies and women's and gender studies. A strong proponent of experiential and holistic education, Ruth believes that life is interdisciplinary. Working from that perspective, she seeks to find ways for students to connect what they learn at Willamette, both inside of the classroom and outside the classroom, with the world beyond our doorstep. Ruth, thanks for helping organize this event tonight, and I'll hand it off to you now.
Thank you, Eric. So rather than do the little round robin, I'm actually going to call up first. We have here Joyce Millen, who is an associate professor of anthropology. She is a longtime advocate of community-engaged learning and experiential learning, and we are delighted to have her here to talk about these things. And now that I know how to pin people, I'm not sure I know how to unpin. Remove the pin. Okay. Going across the screen, these are the things we all learn to do in Zoom land. So Professor David Craig, professor of biology. He is the one of the co-chairs of our summer collaborative research program and helps put on our Student Scholarship and Recognition Day, and is a big booster of all things research, and is here to talk to you about such things. Scott Pike, professor of environmental science and archaeology. He is very active in study abroad here on campus. In fact, he pretty much has never spent a summer in Oregon because he takes students away every summer to do interesting things, and also serves on our study away committee, helping to match students with study away programs. So he can talk about both research and study away. And then last but not least, we have Professor Wendy Peterson Boring, who is a professor of history, also very, very active in community engaged learning and experiential learning of all sorts. So these are our great set of folks with us tonight. So the things that we're focusing on tonight include research. And as a little quickie definition of research, obviously part of research could be somebody is writing a research paper and they get sent off to the library and they look up lots of information and analyze it, synthesize it, and produce it for their professor or for other readers. When we talk about research in academia more broadly, though, what we mean is participating in knowledge creation. And this is something that we think is really important for our students. As professors, we teach students things that we know, but we also teach students how to learn things and think things for themselves. That is what academia is about, is producing knowledge as well as sharing knowledge. And we think that it's an incredibly important part of students' education to be able to be engaged in that research in all sorts of ways, whether it is in the lab, in the field, in the library, and archive, all sorts of ways that students can learn for themselves, not only to gather data, to analyze it, to synthesize it, to share it, but to really be part of this enterprise of thinking about what learning and knowledge are. So students can learn pretty much anything imaginable. You can do research in any field, and opportunities abound for students to work in mentored research projects with professors, either as part of a professor's larger research program or in a project that the student comes up with. We have a lot of different kinds of opportunities around campus. Some of these are for credit, some of them are paid, some of them are purely volunteer and unpaid and not for credit, but all of them will contribute to people's learning opportunities. Internships are also structured ways for students to be able to learn about the world around them, to take what they have learned in class and apply it to usually a workplace setting, or take what they have in that workplace setting and apply it back to what they're doing in class. Internships are not merely jobs that students are not paid for. In fact, you can have paid internships, but generally what you do is get credit for the work that you do, and you think about how it involves itself with your education. You might do an academic project in connection with that internship or that work placement. There are a variety of different kinds of internships available, and we'll talk a little bit more about them later, but that's kind of a brief overview. Community engaged learning is something we used to call community service learning. Distinct from community service, which is simply doing things for other people, this is a way of engaging with community partners, both groups as well as individuals, working on things that are deeply important to those communities and individuals, and again, having an academic experience that is related to the work that you're doing. And we've got some of my faculty colleagues here who will be talking to you about different kinds of projects that they have engaged in or that their students have engaged in. And then finally, study abroad. Again, study abroad is not a vacation. It is not just going off someplace and spending your time touring a city or lying on a beach. It is a way of deeply engaging with another culture. It can involve language study. It does not have to involve language study. Sometimes students are worried about going abroad because they don't have the language skills they think to study abroad. You can study abroad in a country that is primarily English speaking and not have to worry about the language at all. Or you can go to a country where you don't speak the language, and it's one of the best possible ways of learning the language. So this is another really, really important thing to think about study abroad. Study abroad is a wonderful, wonderful way of building skills for almost any kind of profession or career after college. That kind of intercultural flexibility and knowledge, ability to throw yourself into a new situation in which you really don't know any of the landmarks and land on your feet and find your way on your own, is one of the best possible maturation experiences, dare I say, for a college-age student. I would say that study abroad is probably the most important thing I did while I was in college. So we have very affordable ways and a range of different types of programs for students to get involved in. And I strongly encourage every student to participate in some kind of study abroad program before they graduate. In fact, what I would like to see is every single one of Willamette's students do at least some kind of research or some kind of internship or some kind of community engaged learning or study abroad before they graduate, and ideally all of these. So let's move on and talk to some of our faculty experts about the different components of this kind of learning.
Good evening. I'm going to share about Student Scholarship and Recognition Day, SSRD. It's the 23rd year that we'll have this event. And in the same way that Dean Feingold sort of defined what we mean by these kinds of different experiences that are related to research, scholarship here in this case is that idea of producing new knowledge. It's sort of that students are scholars and are making or creating and collaborating within a whole bunch of different communities. The traditions of SSRD historically were this kind of all campus, all day kind of festival feeling of going to different rooms and supporting your friends doing their theses and seeing performances. The pandemic has challenged that. So the last 2 years, we've done it all through Zoom. This year, we're going to return back to mostly in person as much as we can, provided things continue in the current trajectory. The day is April 13th. That's the traditional sort of period, the second or third week in April of every year. The students, we did a call for intent to present, and those came in. We have currently a lot of talks. March 13th is when students need to have their final abstracts and titles in. I'm sharing this in the event that some of you are involved in supporting your students. You can remind them that March 13th is the deadline for getting that in. Then April 13th, they'll do their presentation. We already have at least 140 presentations and titles that folks are ready, many senior theses, lots of special seminar-oriented classes at many levels of our education, and then lots of different grant-funded projects from internal awards and external awards. All majors, minors, and programs are represented this year, and the majority of presentations will be a 12 to 15-minute talk with additional time for questions, and we will have some posters. We're going to have some performances. We have a special showing of 12th Night, and we're going to work on, in this period between February 13th and March 13th, we're looking for capacity building in and around how many of our presentations will be done in a hybrid format. We'll have a limited number. And the great news is with the investment in building our program, everyone will be able to see our program on March 18th. So you have about a month to know how and when your family member is presenting. This is a great way for students to learn about research who don't know what research is and these kinds of learning, because this is when people go and present it and at all different levels. So it's a great way to learn, great way for folks to understand other disciplines and have ideas of what they might consider. If I could have the next slide, I made a word cloud of the top 100 words and the titles of the talks right now. And again, if you sort of jump out, Oregon, Willamette, health, those are kind of not surprises. As you go around the circle, you'll see lasers and personal rights and Chemawa and all kinds of things, cells, behavior models, everything there. So there's gonna be something for everybody. We are hoping to use this as again, in this particular time of trying to do in-person things as well and as safely as we can. We are hoping to have as much engagement as safely as possible. And the audiences will be primarily students, for students, and all of us supporting them. We are going to have outside donors and prospective students are also going to be participating. So big day, April 13th. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm back a little bit to talk about internships. So as I gave a really brief overview earlier, internships are a fantastic way for students to gain professionalizing experience. They are in a workplace setting. They are working with people frequently who have been professionals in that field and in that office and that setting for many, many years. It's a great way for them to build networks. They can also build networks with their interns. Sometimes an internship can be a really good stepping stone to a job, and an organization will offer a student a job post-graduation. Sometimes an internship will give them the skills they need to get a different job. Sometimes, and I will note, and your student may have this experience, they will learn by doing an internship that the last thing in the world that they want to do is to have a career in that field. That is a really valuable learning experience too. Just as with science, if something doesn't work, that gives you information as well. An internship is a really great way for a student to figure out, oh, hey, I really am not good at this. I really don't like this. I really want to try something else. We have two different kinds of internships that we support for credit at Willamette. Some of these are departmentally based internships. A number of departments, including the history department, the politics policy one, ethics department, for example, have regular internship classes. Students sign up for those, and the professors will help place them in internships with local organizations for this class, and the class will meet together and they will work on projects together. So, for example, the PPLE department has a legislative internship class that is run during the same year as the legislature's long session, and we have at sometimes dozens and dozens and dozens of students working across the street, helping the Oregon state government run. The other form of internships that we have for credit are run through the Career Development Center. Now, the Career Development Center does not hand students internships on a plate. We do not have a set of internships lined up and match students with them. We do have a variety of supports to help students find internships with different kinds of organizations and businesses. We can help them apply for those internships. And if students want to get credit for the internships that they do, then they sign up for a class that is run online through the Career Development Center, which will help guide them on a weekly basis through the kinds of self-reflective practices that they should engage in order to get the most out of their internship experience. Internships can take place during the academic year. We are, as I noted, in the middle of the city, and there are a variety of agencies and organizations and businesses immediately within walking or driving distance of campus that will permit students to have a placement. The departmentally based internship courses are pretty much all during the year. So, for example, every psychology major has to do some form of internship as their senior project. Some of those are research-based internships with professors here on campus. Many of them are with organizations out in the community, and those take place during the academic year. Sometimes they're internships over the summer. If a student wants to do a summer internship, they can take the academic credit that they would be getting for the internship and split it up between the spring and the fall, or have it all in one semester so that they don't have a tuition overcharge for doing the internship. Students will frequently, as I noted, get paid for an internship. It is more and more the tendency in businesses that recognize that it is important that students from all income levels have the ability to do internships, that they will provide pay. If students are interning with an organization that is unable to pay their interns, we do have some scholarships available. And please note that if a student wants to apply for summer funding for an internship, the deadline is April 30th of this year. And they can find application information on the Career Development Center website, and they can go in and talk to somebody from the Career Development Center about doing this. And that is a way of getting funding so that they are able to do an internship as opposed to working at a summer job that might be less rewarding, less valuable for their education. Those are the basics really of internships. I encourage you to talk to your student about going into the Career Development Center, to talk to the counselors there, look at the resource courses that are available, or if they're interested in doing an internship within their major, to look for the internship class and talk to the professor who's teaching it, figure out which option is better for them. But generally a good time to think about doing an internship would be the summer after your sophomore or the summer after your junior year. I tend to tell students that the summer after their first year, they get to relax, they can go home, they can see their friends, they can see their siblings and their dogs, and work some kind of job, but that they shouldn't necessarily be concerned about building towards their future that way. But the summer after their sophomore year, it's a really good idea to think about doing this. So that would be my advice. And I will hand this off to my next colleague.
So that's me, and I get to talk about community engaged learning, which is something I'm really passionate about. And what is it? So we have a handy definition here that is something that we share with our other schools in the Northwest 5, which is all the liberal arts schools in the Pacific Northwest. A teaching and learning practice that integrates meaningful community partnerships with instruction and critical reflection to teach civic and social responsibility and strengthen communities through co-learning. So it's a long way of saying that the whole point of it is to build long-term sustainable relationships with community partners that are reciprocal, that actually respond to the community partners' needs. So Ruth mentioned that we used to have sort of an old model of service learning, and that was a little bit more about what can we do for you. And this model instead is listening to communities' needs and trying to figure out how it is that we can have a long-term relationship where students get to learn over the course of not just a brief, like show up and sort food kind of activity, but a long-term learning experience. So the purpose of it is to foster this growth and development of active, engaged citizens through action and thoughtful reflection. Some of our courses are tagged as community engaged learning courses. But the crazy thing is that many of them are not tagged as community engaged learning, but it happens in almost every discipline and every class at Willamette. It's ubiquitous across the curriculum. It happens in a couple different ways. There is, on the one hand, short term, and that's more sort of maybe using a unit in a class to engage in community engaged learning. Long-term semesters or years or long collaborations. You also find community engaged learning as part of capstones or thesis. So if I were to give examples, we have Willamette has long-term working relationships with over 50 community partners, ranging from the legislature and the governor's office and all the state offices to the hospital, to the community food share, to political organizations for migrant and seasonal farm workers, museums, archives, schools, the state penitentiary, shelters for the houseless, hospice, local radio stations. It's really quite an astonishing list of folks that we have long-term relationships and placing our students in these learning opportunities. And to give examples of short-term, one of my favorites is a class in inorganic chemistry where Professor Holman has students create mini podcasts for radio airplay that explain real-world examples to non-scientists. So the students get on there and they talk about chemistry and everyday life, like how do you make tattoos? What are coffee beans? And they record the studio and audio excerpts in either English or Spanish. And then the podcasts are aired as a special piece called Chemistry Corner, their local community radio station. And that's gone on for years. Another great example of a short-term sort of part of a course is in sustainability design, which is a class taught by Professor Rachel Steck in our theater department. Students collaborate with an off-campus partner that is looking for a sustainable design solution, and they meet with that partner and they put together an entire design project with multiple layers. A class that I teach, which is food justice. Students help Marion and Polk Food Share put on hunger banquets and host a regional food summit and create final projects that assess community food needs, and they submit their findings to the local agencies. A long-term example in terms of where a student might be involved over multiple semesters or for the entirety of the class. Professor Melissa Michaud in our politics PPLE department teaches a transformative justice class that is a semester-long class that's in the Oregon State Penitentiary. And the students are enrolled alongside of Oregon State Penitentiary interns, and they engage in reading and writing together. One ongoing project that one of our participants here is involved with is the Oak Salvage Project, which is going on right now. With faculty from Earth and Environmental Science, Biology, and History are involved in mapping these incredible great white oaks that are around Salem that are hundreds of years old that survived the ice storm. They're collecting samples from the trees to determine how old they are, but they're also collecting oral histories. So they're being trained in how to do that, and then they're disseminating that and making that information available. The capstone community engaged learning, one of the neat things about it is oftentimes we have students who work in a community engaged learning placement sometime in their sophomore or junior year, and then they're able to expand on that project and actually weave that into their capstone. So a student that I supervised recently did a community engaged learning at a local museum where they took all of the museum paraphernalia, including clothing and letters, and they organized it, digitized it, and then curated an exhibit. And their capstone was building out a web page that made those findings available to the larger community. So as you can tell, they're incredible skills-based things that also are really about Willamette's commitment of knowledge into action. And particularly one of the things that makes us distinctive is this notion that the border between the university and the world is not a wall, it's a permeable membrane where ideas and actions go back and forth between the community and Willamette, and we learn from each other.
Okay, thank you, Professor Peterson Boring and Dean Feingold. Hello, everyone. I'm Joyce Millen, and while Dean Feingold and Professor Peterson Boring have explained a lot of why we have academic-based internships, why they matter, the kinds of things we do, and the various ways we promote this form of learning at Willamette, there are other things that I can bring to this, and that is how our students grow from the experience, and they grow tremendously from the experience. So the best way for me to explain all of this, I think, is to give you some examples. It's very easy to say they grow from the experience, but precisely how do they grow? So the examples I'm going to give you now come from a capstone class I'm currently teaching. So a class of seniors who are in the Public Health Ethics, Advocacy, and Leadership program here at Willamette. So one way our students grow is by solidifying their classroom learning, as both Dean Feingold and Professor Peterson Boring have said. So Allegra, for example, Allegra is working across the street at our state capitol as a legislative aide to a representative who has been newly appointed to the Behavioral Health Committee. And because he doesn't know much about the Behavioral Health Committee, she's helping orient the representative as well as the staff. And she's also working on understanding myriad benefits and disadvantages of two particular bills that are now coming through the legislature on mental health care services in Oregon. So in her position, she is solidifying her learning of her primary interest, which is public health policy. How is legislation written, for example? What is the trajectory that a bill goes through to get through the legislative process? How do representatives, for example, navigate the divergent interests of competing stakeholders, and so much more? Another student in that class, Anna, is also solidifying her classroom learning by working at an elder care facility in Salem on efforts to improve emergency preparedness. So Anna is learning firsthand about public health jurisdictions, about differences between laws, regulations, statutes, recommendations, and all aspects of accountability, and then what we refer to as implementation science. Students also learn career options, and they hone in on their specific vocational preferences, as we've learned. Take, for example, the case of Callie. Callie's working on the other end of campus, across the other street at the Salem Hospital. And she's had the idea that she wanted to work in hospital administration for a really long time, but she didn't know exactly what in hospital administration interested her. So she's working, interning in the neurotrauma unit of the hospital to learn about how hospital administrators work. And in the process, she's learned a lot about staffing shortages through the time of a pandemic, and she's learning the vital importance of human resources for hospitals. Surya is another one of our students who's learning about career options. She's interested in all things related to environmental health justice, but she doesn't know yet whether or not she wants to work in the private sector, or if working in the public sector is more what she might like to do in the future. So her internship is helping her test the waters. She's currently working for a wonderful organization not too far from Salem called Beyond Toxics to see how the non-governmental organization, the private sector, functions. What are the opportunities and the disadvantages and the constraints of working in the private versus the public sector? Students working in community also gain soft skills, which help them succeed in their lives beyond Willamette. So Skylar's a really good example of that. She wants to go on and work in clinical medicine, and she's interested in helping serve underserved populations, or the people we all talk about who fall through the cracks. How do you reach these vulnerable populations? So she's currently working with the Marion Pope Food Share, which Wendy had mentioned earlier, which has 50 plus food pantries located in our area. And she's trying to figure out one particular population, an ethnic population that's in great need of food share services, but aren't accessing it. So she's charged with understanding that. And as a result, she's learning about network analysis and other tools and techniques to reach vulnerable populations, which again is what she would like to do in her career as a clinician, as a medical clinician. And last is Abby, who's working as an intern at our Marion County Health Department, Health and Human Services down the road. Her interests are wide-ranging and concerned with diversifying the public health workforce through the creation of more public health internships, and also liaisoning with academic institutions. Marion County is becoming an academic public health institution. In any case, she's learning something very interesting in terms of soft skills. She was recently invited to participate in a search committee at the Marion County Health Department to bring in a new public health professional. And she's had the opportunity to learn about how to present oneself as a professional and how to best interview and how to be successful in the process. So these are all excellent on-the-job training, soft skills learning that all of our students are learning. And these, of course, are just a few examples. But I just want to reiterate something that Wendy has said, and that is, as the central institution of higher learning here in the city of Salem, Willamette works very hard to develop and co-create mutually beneficial collaborations and partnerships between our university and the wider community in which it rests. And our students are intimately involved in that process.
Okay, and now it's my turn, and I'll move from the community-centered nature of Willamette, which is very much true, and also now talk about Willamette in the wider world, and talk about Willamette study abroad programs. As Dean Feingold said at the beginning of this session, I'm very involved with study abroad and have been since I've been at Willamette, because like Dean Feingold, find it to be an incredibly valuable experience. I know it was for me, and I think it has been for many, if not all, the students that have had the opportunity to take abroad and join me in exploring other places. Why do study abroad? And a simple bullet I put up was it's the ultimate liberal arts experience. It's an opportunity for students to expand their critical thinking and their learning while living abroad and adapting to different cultures and to different people, different ways of seeing the world. It's a way of having a conversation with someone who might have a different perspective and learning from that. I also like to think that being in a study abroad program, we encourage students not to be tourists in a country, but to actually be engaged with the culture and the people of that country. And that's a big difference. This isn't about being on a cruise ship. It's about being on the ground, living and understanding how people will function in another land. And it's such an incredibly valuable experience. Plus the people you meet, some of them may become lifelong friends. And one of the beauties of the internet and social media is that it's easy to stay in touch with people now and to keep those relationships going even after you've returned home and back to the US. I also believe study abroad gives you a greater global perspective. Today, we're all, have concerns about the Russian and Ukrainian conflict and the battles that are going on there. I actually have some close colleagues in Ukraine from my time abroad. So, I'm engaged and I'm concerned, but I also do think I have a more appreciative perspective of some of these global issues that face us today. For students who are interested in learning another language, study abroad is a great opportunity to be completely embedded in a culture that speaks that language. If students are interested in Spanish, they have multiple continents to go to, or Portuguese. So it's a fantastic opportunity. French as well. And one thing I tell my advisees when I meet with them and I'm encouraging them to do study abroad is there's really no other better time to travel than when you're a student, typically a junior in college, because you're cared for. There's a university looking out for you, and so it's a fantastic time to explore. So again, I just really support students being able to do that. Now, Willamette's very fortunate that we have many different kinds of programs to fit students' interests and students' needs. We have year-long programs, we have semester-long programs, and we have summer programs. So students may want to travel and be in a country for a year, or maybe just one semester. Or for some students, they might only want to take an opportunity to do a study abroad. They want to be on campus during the regular school year, so they do a summer program. So we have those opportunities for them. Now, how are the programs run? Well, again, we have many opportunities. In fact, we have over 100 different universities that students can attend. Willamette is a member of the, I have to read this, International Student Exchange Program, which is an exchange program with over 100 overseas participants. So what this program does is if one of our students goes to one of the cooperating institutions, then we would accept one of their students to come join us. So not only does it give our students an experience to go abroad and have the wonderful experience there, but it also internationalizes our own campus by bringing students to Willamette. So that's a wonderful program that we have. We also have Willamette-sponsored programs or consortiums that aren't as large as the ISEP program. But we develop relationships, for instance, with schools in Ecuador or France or Spain, where these are smaller programs that Willamette is more intimately engaged with the administration of. So those are opportunities too. And then we have a third type of program, which is the faculty-led program. This is where a Willamette faculty member actually is the instructor during the semester abroad. Our program now is in Galway, in Ireland. I've had the wonderful pleasure of leading that for 1 year or one semester. It was a great experience back in 2016. Summer programming is also popular with many students. We have rotating programs. It's really dependent on faculty interests and faculty input. I've been leading a program in Scotland now for 12 years. I run an archaeology field school in the north of Scotland in Orkney. And every year I'm able to take 13 or 14 students with me. We've selected our students for next summer. I'm very excited about that. We've had to take a 2-year hiatus because of the pandemic. So it's going to be really nice to get back and get dirty with the Scots over there. Another thing about our majors, or about all our programming, is that every major student in any major on campus is able to participate in study abroad. So it's not a program that's strictly limited to the language programs. A student in exercise science and health, a student in global cultural studies, a student in any of our majors is able to go abroad. And most of our department websites even have recommended programs on their department's homepage to encourage students to have these experiences. The application process is in the fall. Typically, it's juniors who go abroad, but not exclusively. For semester or year-long programs, we typically see applications coming from sophomores. They would apply in the fall. So we did. So this year's process has already been initiated, and those selected to participate have already were notified, I believe, just last week. So they were very happy to hear that. The application process is managed by our Office of International Education. So they process the applications, and they also will meet with students and prospective students to talk about the programs, to talk about the students' interests, and to help them narrow down the types of programs that the student might be interested in. The OIE, I like to think that they're paid to worry. They are really good warriors. They plan for all contingencies, and they are excellent to work with, because I would think as parents, you might be concerned about things, but the OIE takes care of that. They offer, all students go with a supplemental travel insurance. They have pre-orientation meetings to help the students prepare to live abroad for 3 months, 9 months, or even if it's just the summer. They work with the students to understand how the new university that they will be visiting, how to register for courses, what courses will be available. They encourage students to come seek out their departmental advisors to also work out a course lesson if a student wants to study abroad and take a class that would count to their major. So the OIE office is a very valuable resource for all our students who want to do study abroad. So there's a tremendous support network. They also, through their pre-orientation meetings, they have students start thinking about what is it they want to get out of the experience. And then they have a post-experience reflection period. So when students come back to the US and come back to Willamette, they have an opportunity to reflect on their experiences and to adjust to being back on the Willamette campus. So it's a holistic experience that the students have, and it's I would encourage I do encourage all students to have some sort of study abroad experience. The last time I looked at the statistics, about 40% of any graduating class is studying abroad, and our goal is to hopefully have 50% of students so we can see more participation. Thank you. Oh, I did want to mention one thing since there's a bit of a lull. A lot of students worry about cost. They think that going to study abroad is going to cost them more. And in fact, the way Willamette has organized this is whether you're on an ISEP program or a Willamette-sponsored program, the cost to attend will be the same as the tuition that you pay for Willamette. So the scholarships are transferable. You would essentially pay Willamette, and then Willamette covers the fees for the field school, or for the field school, for the study abroad experience.
All right, thank you so much. Ruth, did you want to do a little summary, or I don't see whether there have been any questions that have come in?
I mean, my summary would be pretty much reminding people of where we started at the beginning, that as wonderful as the classes are that your students are going to be taking here on campus, that getting out of the classroom and engaging in these other kinds of educational experiences are really, really crucial. It's one of the things that we can do best for them while they are here in college. It's a very important part of Willamette's educational philosophy. We like to turn knowledge into action, and I would like to say we also flip that around and turn action into knowledge. Anything you can do to encourage your student to get involved in one of these opportunities, please go ahead and do it.
All right. Well, it seems like we have reached the end of our program this evening, and I am very, very thankful to Ruth and the rest of our panelists this evening. As you can see, we've got some incredible faculty here at this institution, and I'm so happy that they took some time this evening to join us and share this information. And I hope that our audience found this information valuable and that you'll check in with your students and see where they are in this process. As we mentioned, there are multiple ways that they're receiving this information on a consistent basis, but it never hurts to just check in and make sure that they've considered this type of learning as part of their Willamette experience.
I did just see that there's one question in the Q&A.
All right.
Someone has asked, if a student is currently a junior but has not applied for an internship, it sounds like it's too late to do one her senior year. No, it is not. First of all, there's absolutely the possibility of finding an internship over the summer, but there are also plenty of ways of finding an internship for the next academic year, either through her department or, again, through the Career Development Center. One of the really great advantages of Willamette is that as a college in the middle of the state capital, within easy reach of a lot of other communities, including Portland, there are lots and lots of ways that students can do internships during the academic year. So it's absolutely not too late. Sorry to interrupt. Just I saw that there was that question and I thought I should answer it.
Well, yeah, thanks so much for jumping in there. And I see in the chat that there were one or two other questions, and I know Dr. Craig answered the SSRD question. That event is for all levels. Is the study abroad calendar the same as Willamette schedule?
Totally depends on the university that people go to. Scott, you may have more to say about that.
Case by case situation. Okay, that makes sense. All right, I think that we are good to go unless there are any other questions. Again, thanks so much to our panelists and thanks to our audience for joining us this evening. I hope this information was valuable, and I hope we'll see you again at future parent forums. And take care, everyone.